there are ideas that are floating around. I don't think there's a bill that anybody's put together. It's hard to tell exactly what could be done, especially when there isn't transparency in the sheriff's department about how this person was hired after the sheriff's deputy resigned over and over again, couldn't hold a job at a department, a law enforcement department.
I think that, yes, I think there are some things that probably certainly, I mean, we're going to evaluate all of this, Greg. Do I have an answer for you specifically as to what could or should be changed yet? No, but we're going to go through a process to try to, examine that thoroughly and make sure that we can make changes that are going to be helpful to the profession and bring more good people back in. There's certainly there are minimum qualifications that any officer in the state of Illinois has to have, and those are set by statute. So you have to be, for example, 21 years of age. You have to not be convicted of a felony. You have to be eligible to be able to receive a FOID card. From that point in time, counties over 1 million people in population have to have what's called, for sheriff's offices, they have to have what's called a Sheriff's Merit Commission. Other counties in the state that are below 1 million can have them, but they're not required to by law. Although a lot of them do set them up, and they set them up by ordinance through their county boards. Sangamon County, for example, would have a merit commission. Generally speaking, many of them will have you apply their application, they'll evaluate the application, see if you're eligible. In a lot of cases, there will be a written test that they have to pass. There will be a physical test called the power test that they have to pass. From that point in time, many will also then go through a psychological exam that they're evaluated on to see if they're an eligible candidate to be able to handle being in law enforcement. Some may also go through either in addition to or alternatively, they may take a polygraph. From that point in time, if they pass all those stages, then they would be considered eligible to be hired by that agency. From that point in time, and the Merit Commission would approve that eligibility list, indicating that they'd passed those different components and that they were up for consideration at that point in time for potential hire. Then the sheriff's office would make a decision about who they want to hire. From that point in time, they would then enroll in the Basic Law Enforcement Academy, and there are several academies across the state. And they would submit that information and that request to the Illinois Law Enforcement Trainings and Standards Board to make sure that that person had, an appropriate background check. They checked their background as well as the agency that was hiring them. And from that point in time, they enroll in the academy, and now the academy is 16 weeks. They have to, if they don't pass the academy, obviously they're out. At the end of the academy, they then have a state exam that they have to take, that they have to pass a minimum of 70%. From there, then they go through what's called a field training process within the agency that they're hired. That could be a lot of in classroom when they make it to the new agency. It also is obviously going to be hands-on field experience from there. And then when they're completed with that, then they're released to go work as a deputy.
Remember that it's near impossible when you say someone resigned from a position, right? It's near impossible to make a judgment unless there's more of a report that's been, as you say, has been passed from one department to another. But there's a lot of protecting people. What happens is they do something wrong in a department, and the department head, the HR department, decides, well, they don't want to affect this person's career going forward. So instead of holding them accountable at that department and having a record of that, they'll just quietly recommend that they resign. And that is how you see somebody moving from position to position. Now, should they do more? Absolutely. Those local departments should be held accountable if there was wrongdoing at the department that went unreported, and instead the person was suggested to simply resign. But again, these are questions that a sheriff who's hiring somebody ought to be asking. I don't know whether he asked those questions. It seems to me he could not have. If he had, he would have learned a lot. Someone who moves from job to job, 1 year, half a year, and does it 6 times over the course of a few years, and whose record coming out of the military is questionable. I think those are all things that ought to be taken into account. I want to know, and all of us, I think, want to know why the sheriff didn't take those things into account or dive deeper into those questions. It seems like there were cursory conversations because a resignation, well, that seems benign.
Maybe there's a process where we have to, there has to be a release of information provided by that individual, the applicant, that says, hey, give all my information out. And then the agency that has the information, make sure that they make the request that's required. I think there's some things that could be looked at there. But again, there was a background. The person was, already an existing police officer in the state. For it, I've not heard from anybody specifically about hearings, but I'm sure the issue will, as you and I both know, will come up in the veto session in the spring session, and that's fine. And having a conversation about this is an important thing to do. I certainly don't want to, diminish any of that and say that it's not an important issue for us to discuss, because I think it is. With that said, I hate for the situation to be politicized. And that's what I feel like some of this is occurring now. And I think that, again, let's focus on how we can make things better for everybody.